Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about courage. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, as a software developer, I find myself to be quite timid. How can I learn to be more courageous and take on more challenging responsibilities and tasks that I haven't done before? Well, um, I would say that it comes down to a realization. And it's probably the biggest realization that I can give you, and it's going to save your career, so listen up. This is the life you chose as a software developer, or the career at the very least. You know those years you spent as a junior, or maybe you're still a junior, where you felt scared shitless over fucking up and you have to learn all this stuff and there's so many things to learn and it's so complicated. That is your bread and butter. That is the thing that you have to understand, that is what your career is going to be about. Because when you don't feel that way any longer, or rather you get better at dealing with that, like the anxieties and the so-called fallout of having that state. Uh, that's something you can master, but you can never get so complacent that you're not trying out new things and taking on more responsibilities and more challenging tasks and so forth. The reason why you can't do that is because that is literally the thing that is keeping you employed. Most people, and trust me when I say this, when you get to be like a tech lead or like the sort of roles that I usually have, you will be surprised at how many of your coworkers who are in middle management, product owners, PMs, and so forth, they don't do this organically. They don't try to figure out why something isn't working or learn new things or anything like that. They try to make that your job as much as possible or somebody else's job. And that is why you are a software developer and they are not. Because that is what the software developer in essence has to do to be effective at their career. You can absolutely learn some stuff, and then that's the problem what usually happens. That's why I tell people that usually the difference between someone who has 5 years of experience and someone who has 15 years of experience isn't all that great. And the reason is very simple, because after around 5 years you get complacent and you stop trying to be more than you can be. And that's fine if you work on the low end of IT, or if you're very lucky, you're going to be able to nail into that exact moment where nothing really changes, things are sort of stable, and you can kind of go up through the ranks and hopefully transition away from software engineering at some point, or become a very ineffective senior software developer at some point, which is the thing that I meet a lot of people like that, so-called seniors who are not by any means seniors. It's just that they kind of think that they are seniors because they've managed to survive in the industry doing a few very specific things that are only really and that's the illusion a lot of software developers have. You think that you're going to learn a few things, and then because you got your first job and you stay at that job for 10 years, that makes you a senior. No, it does not. What makes you a senior is your understanding of the IT industry and how this entire field of work works, the ecosystems, all the tools, all the trends, all of that stuff. That is your job. You are the pioneer in the IT age. And when you realize that that is the role that you have chosen as a software engineer, I hope that you start to realize why I think it's hilarious that some software developers are just in for the money. Because the reality is that that is not how IT works. There are people, you will definitely be able to work in that fashion, but I think that companies such as, say, Google or like so forth, like the entire IT industry wants to get away from people like that as much as humanly possible. The only reason they get hired is either because the company is desperate or doesn't have a choice because of the scarcity of software developers, or they're ignorant of what actually makes a successful IT company, because that's the other part, but that is going away fast. Fast. I would go as far as to say that we are getting very soon to a point where you will not be able to work as a software developer if you're not actually passionate about programming, and you're actually not the sort of person who would want to, who would openly say that, yes, I don't know all, like being humble enough, if that makes sense, to actually admit that, no, I don't know all the things, but I'm very excited to figure out how it works, because that is the sort of person that every single IT company is looking for. And so to learn to be more courageous, it's actually very simple. How do you get courage into a person to start off with? Because it's actually not something that is you're born with necessarily. Everybody has, of course, certain dispositions, but at the end of the day, what makes you able to take on more challenges is to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that is a skill that you can train. Because if you make a commitment to yourself that you are going to try to do things that you find interesting, and that's why I argue that that's the important part, because no sane human will want to do something that scares them, is uncomfortable, and so forth without any reward at the end. And that's why you're never going to do anything, and that's why most people don't do anything with their lives. They sit around waiting for death, basically, because you don't have an incentive to go and do something that is a little bit out there, or a little bit scary, or something like that. And as a software developer, that drive to learn more and to adopt more concepts and become a better software developer is the thing that's going to give you that incentive to go and try out something that is a little bit out there, something that is different, or something that is more scary, and so forth. And you don't have to go, all in and do like the most toughest thing that you kind of don't even know what you're doing, right? What you need to do is to kind of find the peripheral of the outskirts of the thing that scares you, and take a step right into that, and stay there until you don't feel all that scared of doing that part of the problem anymore. And then your sphere of things that scare you shrunk. Now you take the next step into the next zone of things that seems a little bit weird or scary to you, and you continue that process until you get to a point where you've done that part that it becomes meta thinking almost. You're a little bit unsure how something works, and you're not really sure how you're going to solve it, but you're not really scared about it because you've had that experience 100 times before, so it doesn't really matter. Imagine being a soldier in a war. Everybody's scared of dying, to a certain degree, of dying and so forth. But I will argue that the average soldier has been in so many situations where life and death has been the stakes, that sooner or later it affects them less and less. And that's fear is, as I said, it's best killed by exposure, by trying to do something that is a little bit more scary than what you're used to, seeing that, and like basically coming out the other end of that thing, seeing that it kind of went well, learning from that, and repeating the process. So what I want you to take away from this is that as a software developer, if you want to be more courageous and take on responsibilities and more challenging tasks, learning by doing is the best way to do it. Exposure is everything. You have to realize that it's the biggest motivator I can give you. Your future career completely depends on your ability to do this. It is down to nothing else. Because even if you are the world's best software developer today, in 10 years, if you don't update yourself, if you don't try to grow as a person, you will basically, I'm sorry to say, guys, that I have worked, and I am working in some cases with people who are just in the way. They still think that they are good, but IT left them behind many, many years ago, and they're just an annoyance to everybody who is actually doing the thing that I'm talking about. So that incentivizes you to hopefully, if nothing else, to understand that your survival within IT very much depends on taking on more and more responsibilities and challenging yourself to do better. And that's why I tell people that the passion is a very key thing here, because no one will do something without any reward if it's scary. But a passionate person doesn't really care so much whether or not something is scary, because they're so curious about figuring out how it works that they're okay with that. And that is exactly how you should do it. Take one step in the right direction, feel the fear, realize that you're just scared, continue doing that until you're no longer scared, take the next step, and repeat. Have a great day.